The question is, are you ready?
What do you guys want to talk about?
Let me talk to you. Yeah.
Throwdown Nation, we are live. It is episode 80 of the Throwdown with Matt. It is a Wednesday night, and I was talking to our guest here before we went live. I can't believe we're at 80 of these things. You know, not only are we on the road to WrestleMania, we're on the road to triple digits here at the Throwdown. Definitely feeling a lot of gratitude. And we are live, like I said, on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter/X, Facebook, and Twitch. And tonight we are throwing down with an Indiana-based wrestler, the flowing Samoan Anthony Toatele. How you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm good, Matt. Thanks for having me on your show, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And something I'll go ahead and say for anybody that's watching this live, if you have any questions or comments, throw them in the chat and we'll either tackle them as we go or do a little Q&A at the end. But we'll go ahead and start, Anthony, with the first and most obvious question, and that is, how long have you been wrestling, sir?
So I have been wrestling for a little over now 11 years. So I started in the very end of 2013.
Wow. So you've definitely been doing this a while, but you've still got some years ahead of you. So it's a good position to be in. So who actually initially trained you?
So I was a gentleman by the name of Congo Kong, another well-known independent professional wrestler in Fort Wayne, Indiana, at a school called Body Slam University, which was owned and ran by a gentleman by the name of Jason Maples, who owns and runs Heroes and Legends Professional Wrestling.
Very nice. Very nice. So in terms of the early portions of your training, what would you say was the most challenging aspect of professional wrestling for you to wrap your mind and your body around?
Honestly, it was just some of the movements and probably just getting my body used to getting beat up. I had just got done playing professional football, indoor football. And I was coming out of camp and just looking for something else besides football because I had a feeling that I wasn't going to make it to the NFL as a sub 6 foot quarterback that ran a 4.6 40. So it was just getting used to the movements, just getting used to being in the ring, but eventually I found my way thanks to my awesome trainer.
Gotcha. So I'm presuming you're still a football fan.
I am.
Who are your teams?
It's funny you say that. I'm more of a college football fan, so I love the University of Utah and the University of Miami in Florida. Those have been my two favorite teams since I was a little kid. In the NFL, I don't really have any favorite teams. I'm a big fantasy football guy, so I really just like watching games and hanging out with my friends and watching games and keeping track of player stats. So, but Super Bowl Sunday this Sunday, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny. I'm also more of a college football fan. And you know, where I went to college, we didn't have football, but my wife is actually a University of Alabama graduate, so I'm a Bama fan by marriage.
Okay.
They had kind of a rough year this year, but we're hoping for better
Man.
things in the future. It was weird
Typically, they bounce right back.
seeing them out of contention. I mean,
Yeah, it's been a while since
yeah,
that's happened.
for sure, for sure. So speed round, Ricochet.
Underrated.
Yeah, yeah. I like what they're doing with him right now. I like this heel run he's kind of got going right now. It's an interesting new presentation for him. He's done some heel work in the past, but I mean, not like this. You know, it's interesting seeing Ricochet as kind of a vicious heel.
Yeah, I like what he's doing right now. It's definitely different than what we've seen him do on television.
So I'm presuming you've been a fan of this stuff the majority of your life. Is that pretty accurate?
Oh yeah, yeah. I can remember watching wrestling with my dad. It was the one thing that we did together as a kind of like a family. I have a younger brother, 2 years younger than me, and every Monday night we would get together and watch wrestling, and he would let us stay up just a little bit longer. Even though it was a school night to watch wrestling with him. So definitely near and dear to my heart. Yeah, so I've been a lifelong fan.
So what would you say is your earliest wrestling related memory?
So my earliest wrestling related memory is probably I can remember, and I couldn't tell you like exact specific details, right? But I do remember watching Sting, specifically Surfer Sting,
Oh yeah,
with the blonde flat top and the colorful face paint. So I can recall when I would visit my grandparents, we get to stay the weekend with them, and I would always, my grandma loved to tell the story when she was alive to everybody, but I would always bust into her makeup. She had like a makeup table with a big mirror on it, and I would get her blue eyeshadow and her pink eyeshadow and paint my face like Sting. That's like the earliest memory I have is doing that and just trying to recreate, Sting's moves and stuff with my one of those big pillows that looked like Ultimate Warrior.
Yep. So was there a particular point that you remember that was any kind of a turning point for you where you went from watching it to thinking, you know what, I think I could do this?
So I think I was in middle school, like 7th grade, and I had started playing football. And really, the only reason I started playing football is because I was a huge fan of The Rock. Being Samoan and then seeing him on TV and doing his thing and hearing him reading his book. So I thought, man, I'm going to try playing football. And then I got into amateur wrestling in middle school a little bit, and that's when I started thinking about like, man, it would be awesome to do that myself. And I kind of held on to that, as I grew up, obviously, because here we are.
Yep. Speed round. Masha Slamovich.
She is very good at what she does.
Yep. With this this new agreement between TNA and WWE, I see some potential interesting matchups in the future. Like I would love to see her end up doing a program with Rhea Ripley. I think that could be quite interesting.
Yeah, I think she's really talented. One thing that I recently just saw is that she wrestled somebody that I know fairly well, is Haley J. And they just wrestled recently, and apparently they the match. So, yeah, she's good at her job, that's for sure.
So, away from wrestling, what are some of your other hobbies and interests?
Yeah, so I'm kind of a meathead. I love to work out, lift weights. That's been always been one of my lifetime things that I've done since I was a kid. But I've recently, in the last 3 years, gotten really into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I'm pretty much training in Jiu-Jitsu 4 or 5 times a week now. And I've competed in some jiu-jitsu tournaments and won some. So I'm hoping to kind of continue that as as I continue to progress my wrestling, hopefully continue to progress my career as a competition grappler.
Nice. It's funny that you mentioned that. I actually trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a number of years. It's been a number of years now since I trained. I actually the school that I was going to literally closed the day after I got my blue belt,
Oh, no
and
way.
and it was a combination between having trouble finding another decent school, and also around that time, my son was getting to the age where things were getting busy with him, and life got in the way, and I never got back to it. At 55, I don't know if I'll ever get back to it, but my son and I roll
That's
around
fair.
at the house a good bit, and I've taught him a lot of what I remember. So it's just been kind of fun doing that with him.
Yeah, I
And
love
he's
jiu-jitsu.
15 now, so I've had to really up my game to hang with him physically. I mean, he's strong, he's bigger than I am, and oh
That's
yeah,
fair.
yeah. But it's
Gotta use
but
technique.
man, it's a
Yeah.
great art. It really, really is. I do miss it. I had a blast doing it, and I can confidently say there is no better full body workout than rolling jujitsu. I mean, you know,
100% agree.
yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep. So, this is mostly a wrestling podcast, but we do dabble a little bit in pop culture. So, just out of curiosity, are you watching or listening to anything cool right now? Because I'm always looking for references to something interesting to dabble in.
Man, I am the absolute worst when it comes to watching television. I'm always behind the eight ball. Like I watched Game of Thrones like probably 6 years after it
Yeah,
finally ended. I did recently. Oh, I did recently watch a super older but True Detective with Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. I did
was
love
that
that
good?
show. There's it's fantastic, fantastic. And then music wise, I am all over the place. I am a stickler for listening to the same stuff that I listened to when I was in high school, with occasionally introducing new things. So the new Kendrick Lamar is out. I do love hip hop. I do love rap. But I also love some hardcore rock and some of that punk rock stuff. So I'm all over the
Gotcha.
place.
Gotcha. Yeah, same here. Like I said, I got into this live streaming actually talking to unsigned bands. I'm a hobbyist bass player. I
Oh,
tinker around with music a little bit, not in a band or anything, but, I have fun with it. And, that's what it's really all about. So, you were mentioning that you do have a day job. What
yeah.
what do you do for your day job?
So I am a product manager for a software development company
Oh,
that
very
works
cool.
with different Department of Motor Vehicles throughout the United States and Canada. So that's a
Oh,
lot.
very
It's a
cool.
lot. It sounds like a really important position. It is, I guess, but definitely keeps me busy. So if I'm not training jujitsu or wrestling, then I'm more than likely working.
Gotcha. So, have any of your coworkers come to see you wrestle?
Yeah, I'm blessed. We've had a few big shows here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, at the War Memorial Coliseum, which is where most of the big sports teams play. included, and then WWE is always there when they come into town. So we've had a couple shows there over my tenure as a wrestler, and I've had a good amount of coworkers come out and support me, and it's usually like their first time coming out to a wrestling show. So yeah, I love when I get to see people that I know aren't necessarily wrestling fans, but are just coming out to support me, and they end up having an awesome time.
And moments like that are just cool, where you can expose people who might not be fans to it, and at least give them an opportunity to see what they think, knowing somebody who's in the ring.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite thing about Fort Wayne?
My favorite thing about Fort Wayne, honestly, it's just at this point in my life, it's the people that surround me that also live in Fort Wayne. I've got a good group of guys that I train with and see regularly throughout the week. We train jiu-jitsu together. We lift weights together. And I mean, I have other childhood friends and stuff that I see, but that core group of guys that we're all grinding every day. I joke with those guys all the time. I feel like I see them 6 days out of 7 days, is the 7-day week. So I really just appreciate that camaraderie that we have, and making that connection. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I wasn't in Fort Wayne.
Absolutely. So speed round, and this one may have some meaning for you because of your heritage as a Samoan. Jacob Fatu.
Next big level thing. He's the next big thing. That's the only way to put it.
I'm pleased to see that, I feel like WWE has done a good job bringing him along, and I'm glad that it feels like they've finally really pulled the trigger on him, and they're really letting him shine. And yeah, that guy, I feel like he doesn't have a ceiling. I think he's going to be as big as they let him be. I mean,
there's a lot of authenticity to him, what you see on television, and the way he talks and the way he carries himself, which is awesome, because not everyone's granted the ability to do that or has had the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely. So, they say that the best wrestling personas are usually kind of yourself turned up to 11. So tell us about in-ring, the flowing Samoan Anthony Toatele, and kind of compare and contrast him with everyday you.
Yeah, that's the best way to describe my wrestling persona. It is just me, just turned up. Whenever someone asks me, who is Anthony Toatele, I tell them it's always, and the term is, it is what it is, but it's the douchebag that you can't help but not to hate, right? Everyone has that guy that they're like, man, he wasn't such a cool guy, like I would hate him. He's athletic, he's good looking, he does all the things that I want to do, but I can't hate him. So that's kind of like, that's the way that I would describe myself. And I kind of, and I'm sure there's plenty of people that would describe me in real life like that. But I just, obviously I'm a little more tempered, even tempered in real life.
Right. So tell us about, if you can remember back this far, tell us about your very first match. What was it like? How did it go? Yeah. What were your thoughts going into it? Thoughts coming out of it? All that. Just lay it on us. What was the first one like?
So my very first match was a 4-on-3 tag match at a promotion I still work for to this day, New Era in Shelbyville, Indiana. It was against two guys that I have high respect for, three guys, honestly, and I haven't seen the other guy, Mouse, for a long time. But against, again, Congo Kong, who was going by Osiris at the time, and then Hillbilly Jed. And then it was me and the rest of my classmates, and it was kind of our graduation, right? So definitely was nervous. Definitely tried to get some things in, but I was more nervous than anything, just for the first time being in front of a crowd, and actually having a match. But it ended up going super well. And again, that really just put me on the path as far as my character development, my growth within the wrestling business, and then even my relationships there at New Era. I think they blossomed from that first time that I was there.
Gotcha. Well, we were talking about it a little bit beforehand. You've been featured. It sounds like fairly frequently on OVW. How did that relationship come about?
Yeah, it's funny. The rumor that I was told is that Amazing Maria, another independent wrestler who is fantastic, has always tried to pitch me to come down to OVW, and I can recall her mentioning that years ago. And then last year I was at a show doing my thing, and the photographer said, "Hey, my husband is an agent at OVW, a producer. I really think that he would like you. You should send him a message." And lo and behold, I had known JMO for a long time. We just hadn't run into each other. And then, he invited me down, and I ended up having my first match at OVW was one on their Overdrive show. And I'm thankful for the opportunity I got then and the opportunities they continue to give me.
That's terrific, because any wrestling fan worth their salt knows the history of OVW and what great contributions that company has made to the business in general, and just getting to be a part of that has to be a thrill.
Yeah, absolutely. The history behind that place and that promotion is untouchable. So I'm glad to just have my little bit of whatever my name is worth tied to that, even if it's just a tiny bit.
Absolutely. And, getting to be around and pick the brain of somebody like Al Snow has got to be cool.
Yeah. I mean, he is the man at OVW. It's his company. He runs it, and he's the main guy. So just hearing his feedback about things and things that he learned in his tenure and his time as he came up in the business is fantastic. And it's a great thing to take back when I'm traveling, on the other weekends and I'm doing my thing.
For sure. So, we've heard about the first match. Now, if you can narrow it down to one or two, tell us about your favorite match that you've been a part of.
Oh man, favorite match that I've been a part of. I have so many matches that I thought would never happen, or matches that I have participated in that I really enjoy. One of them being I had a singles match against Billy Gunn years ago, and that was really my first. It wasn't my first time wrestling a known person that's been on television, but definitely was a big match, a big marquee match. And I was nervous, and I met Billy, and he was one of the coolest guys in the world towards me. And thankfully, every time I see him for the last couple of years, we just pick up right where we left off. So
that's great. To have again, the those kind of relationships are really what all of this is all about.
Yeah.
So speed round. Roderick Strong.
Ring of Honor, great. I
Yep.
think he was one of the first guys to really get me interested in Ring of Honor outside of the known guys like a CM Punk, right? But
Right.
Roddy Strong, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love his Ring of Honor stuff. I love Kyle O'Reilly's Ring of Honor stuff, Adam Cole's, there was so much great talent going through Ring of Honor back in the day,
Yeah.
Just an incredible place. So what is the longest distance or you have ever traveled to get to a match?
So I've been all over pretty much this side of the Mississippi. So I've been to Memphis. I've been to Pittsburgh. Um, did some shows in Arkansas. So, um, yeah, pretty much all this side of the Mississippi I've been to. So that's probably the furthest. Is probably one of those many places. I haven't had an opportunity yet to travel outside the country, but I would love to. So if you're watching and you want me to come to your show outside of the country, let me know. I am passport ready.
So, and I know everybody has them, but what is your biggest in-ring pet peeve?
Honestly, it's super silly and has nothing to do with anyone that I'm working with, but it's honestly uh, uneven boards like in the ring. So underneath the the ring is just a bunch of 2x6s stacked across an empty metal frame. But when the boards are uneven, man, that really like grinds my gears because we're in there and we're trying to do our thing and just feels a little unsafe. And you never know if you take the wrong step, twist an ankle. And I have notoriously bad ankles, so I don't want to twist any ankles. And so that's my pet peeve.
Gotcha. Well, I know that there are sort of 2.5 methods for preparing for a match. You can either work it out with your opponent in the back, you can call it in the ring, or kind of do a hybrid of both. Do you have a preference?
Yeah, definitely a hybrid of both, right? Like I think you've got to be able to be flexible, and you got to listen to the audience. So that was a big thing. Every great person that's made way more money than me in this business has ever told me is you got to listen to the audience, and you got to be willing to call an audible. In football terms, you got to call that audible and change things up on the fly. But at the same time, you definitely have. You want to make sure that you're doing things safely with your opponent, and also make sure that they're taken care of. And there are just certain things that you've got to make sure they're perfect, they're on the dot. So those are the things that I like to go over before we go out there.
Gotcha. Well, your comment shortly ago really was a perfect segue into this question, and that is, in a situation where you would be working in a different country or culture, how do you think you would handle language barriers when interacting with fans or working with the local talent?
Yeah, so I've known quite a few guys that have traveled, to Europe or across the country to Japan, and thankfully we live in a time in a day and age where Google translates as easy as someone speaking into a phone, and then I can just read it back, and same thing, vice versa. But again, I think as a wrestler, there are just, regardless of language barriers, there is an emotion that you can sense when you're in the ring. The ebbs and flows of emotion that happen during a match. So while I may not understand exactly what they're saying, you can feel it's the same as feeling, English-speaking fans here in the States. You can just feel where they're at and know, hey, we got them.
Yeah. Yep. Speed round. And you may know this guy by potentially 2 different names, Jordan Devlin or JD McDonough.
Oh, Prince Devitt Jr. I call him Prince Devitt
Absolutely.
Jr.
Yeah.
He's trained by Devitt. Balor, Finn Balor, but he reminds me so much of him.
Very much, yeah. And watching him work, you can definitely see the fingerprints of Devitt all over him. And and I'm glad that his recent mishap on Raw was not more serious than it looked. Initially, I thought he'd either broken his neck or given himself a severe concussion or something. That looked horrible.
Was crazy.
But it's bad enough that he's broken some ribs and apparently punctured a lung. But at least it's not something worse. Because it could have been
broken rib. Yeah. Broken ribs, not fun.
No.
Can't confirm.
Yeah, prior to what I do now, I used to be a paramedic, and broken ribs were some of the most painful issues I saw my patients go through. And man, it's I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
No thanks.
Nope, nope, nope. So if you could only be one, would you rather be great in the ring or great on the mic?
I think I'd want to be great in the ring. And the reason why I say that is because I think anyone can be good on the mic. Maybe not great, right? But they can be good on the mic if they were coached in how to understand their character, develop a character, and connect to an audience. But that connection to the audience starts with that wrestling. You can go out and show everybody in the first 2 minutes of a match that you are one of the best wrestlers out there. People will listen to you when you're talking. So,
Gotcha. So, what are your thoughts on the WWE's current long-term bloodline story arc and the fact that it is really, to a great extent, kind of a love letter to Samoan and Tongan / Polynesian culture? It's. I just think it's cool that they are doing this kind of a long-term recognition to that culture, because it has had such an impact on wrestling. I just wanted to
yeah,
get your thoughts.
yeah, I think it's so personally, it's awesome. I love to see that our culture is being shared, and people are interested in it. And people have been interested in Samoan culture before, thankfully. Even prior to The Rock, right? With the head shrinkers and Rikishi and all
Yeah.
these other guys, but never has there been such a spotlight on the Samoan Polynesian culture. The whole thing with the tribal chief thing, that is with the ulafala. I also wear an ulafala out to the ring. It's brown, it's not red, because
Mhm.
I'm not a chief yet. But it's funny, I've been saying this as a hashtag on all my stuff like probably the last year. Um, but I said it's the year of the Matai, and the Matai is really the Samoan term for chief. And there's a whole process that you actually have to go through to receive your title as chief for your family. And
Hmm.
this is not this, this is 100% real, but like I've talked to my grandmother about this, who is also they just went to Samoa, and I just had some uncles and cousins that had received their chief title, and I told her, I said, that's something that I want to do, not just because I'm a wrestler and I want to be a real chief, you know what I'm saying, but
Right.
because it shows responsibility. You are a provider and a protector for your family, and I want, I am that right now in my mind, but in the Samoan culture, I want it to be known that I am that. So that is my goal for 2025. Is I want to receive my Matai title and go to Samoa and go through the whole thing.
Very cool. So, you mentioned that your ulafala is brown. What are there different connotations for different colors? I wasn't aware that there was any other color other than the red that I had
Red.
seen.
So
Uh,
in the Samoan culture, like really the red one is typically reserved for a chief or someone of higher regard and higher rank. While the brown one, it's just not painted,
mhm.
right? The nut, they come from a nut. It's just not painted, and it still signifies that you are a person of high importance. And before I even threw that bad boy on and started wearing it in wrestling, I had to check with my grandma to make sure, and she said, "Yeah, absolutely." She said, "Absolutely, you should wear one. Why would you not? You are the eldest grandson, on her side from in the line of my cousins, and she said you should represent our family and show them that you are one of someone of higher importance in our family. And then maybe one day when I get my chief title, I'll wear the red one."
Very cool. Very cool. Um, so, what has been your most unusual encounter with a fan?
I most well, so I probably two questions. I'm sure you have a question about my most uh, crazy or unusual match. and it kind of is hand in hand. So I wrestled in Memphis, Tennessee, probably back in like 2016, 2017. I wrestled a guy by the name of Johnny Dotson, who was a guy that used to wrestle in WCW, very talented guy. We were wrestling in this place that was in a strip mall, and it was jam packed, hundreds of fans. Him and I were on, and he garnered so much heat from the audience, and I'm an out of town guy, so I was surprised that they were cheering for me like they did. Thankfully, Johnny is really good at his job, but a fan that was cheering for me and super into me, she was so angry at Johnny that she threatened to shoot him. And she had a gun in her purse. And the show didn't really stop. Like, our match didn't stop, but it did go a lot longer than we were anticipating. And he went to the back. He ran to the back, and we kind of played this back and forth game. And security came and escorted her out. She took her firearm to the car, and she came back and enjoyed the show. But that's probably the craziest thing that's ever happened to me in wrestling, involving a fan. So yeah, good times though. Only in Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah. So, do you have a preference yourself between working heel or babyface?
So I really like working babyface. I've been a babyface majority of my life. And honestly, it's because I feel like for me personally, when I'm working as a babyface, I'm not a typical like rah go get him babyface. I like to keep it in this realm of realism, right? So if you look at sports today, there are baby faces and heels, but people are going to cheer and boo for whoever they want. I know that sometimes there's just going to be some of those detractors that don't want to cheer for me, and that's okay. I'm not doing it for them. I might be doing it for the kids up in the front row, you know what I'm saying, or the families that are there to enjoy the show. But also, I'll respond just like realistically to people saying something to me, or if a heel says something to me, I'm not going to say, ignore them and just put a smile on my face. Like, I might punch you in the mouth.
Speed round. Bryan Danielson.
One of the greatest of all time as far as wrestlers.
Yeah. Yep. And, he's one of the ones, him, I had mentioned Kyle O'Reilly, the guys that actually have a shoot martial arts background brings some interesting aspects to the ring. You were mentioning you're a jiu-jitsu practitioner. I just find the guys that train in shoot martial arts to bring, like I said, it just brings a unique aspect to their in-ring work, and you can almost kind of tell the guys that have done some of that stuff aside from the pro wrestling training, and I mean, like I said, I just find Bryan Danielson to just be an amazing person and wrestler, martial artist, just guy. He's somebody I would love to just sit down and just shoot the bull with. I mean,
yeah, he's very talented, and definitely, obviously, one of the toughest guys if you go his career and some of the matches he had in Ring of Honor. And then the work that he did in WWE and AEW. He's still putting on great matches up until he, recently departed, or I don't want to say retired, but stepped away.
Yeah. Yep. So in terms of your in-ring work and your promos, who or what would you say are some of your influences? And it can be other wrestlers, pop culture, anything. What has helped shape the Flow and Samoan?
So I love other. There's obviously wrestlers influence other wrestlers, right? And I said The Rock. I love Shawn Michaels, but as far as like promos and character, especially like as of late, like I go back to sports. I love real sports. I love football, basketball. And so if you ever watch some of their reactions when they're getting interviewed post game or, at practice, those are real, for the most part, those are real reactions to those questions. And they don't feel forced and they don't feel pretend. So when I'm cutting a promo, that's how I want it to feel. I want it to come off as, I'm being interviewed and I'm a true competitor in a real sport, right? Like that, because that's
Right.
what this is. I am competing. So
Absolutely. So who, and this can be present day or past, who would be a dream opponent for you? Who would you love to work?
present day or past, man, there's lots of guys out there right now that I would love to get in the ring with. I mean, Matt Cardona is one. Nick Nemeth, formerly known as Dolph Ziggler.
Right.
Me and my friends have a joke. I stole, I don't want to say I steal moves, but I did steal a lot of his moves. And we always say if I got booked against Nick Nemeth, we'd have to do the Spider-Man, the Spider-Man gimmick meme where we just point at each other at the same time after going for the same thing. So, but those two guys are two guys right off the top of my head that are still at the top of their game, still doing their thing. And I've had some dream opponents that I've already wrestled. Someone like a Shane Mercer in an Ironman match for 60 minutes, and that guy is an unsigned talent that probably should be signed. So,
Got you. So, what is your favorite move? Is there something that you just really enjoy doing? And on the flip side of that, is there a move that you either won't do or you would rather not do, and that can be giving or receiving?
so I'm a huge fan of the super kick. I said Shawn Michaels earlier as an influence. I like throwing the super kick. I like doing it in my match. I like using it. One of the reasons I like doing it is because I feel like I make it look like a real kick.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think in today's day and age, you're seeing a lot of super kicks out there, and everyone wants to do a super kick, and it may not always look the best. So, and then as far as moves, like, there are moves obviously I'm not necessarily, I wouldn't say that I'm uncomfortable with taking, but it just depends on who you're working with, right? Like, I don't want to take a pile driver from a kid that's never given a pile driver to someone. And the same for a power bomb. I don't want to take a power bomb from a kid that's 150 pounds and I'm 210, 215, and he's trying to put me up for the power bomb. So
Yeah.
nothing specific.
Yeah.
I just know that I have to typically I have to train the next day and I got to walk. So let's just make sure that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. As a fan, and thankfully you don't see it much anymore, but as a fan, a move that always just gives me the shudders is the vertebreaker. It just
Oh,
seems like there's just so many ways that could go catastrophically wrong. And
yeah.
like I said, thankfully it's a rare occurrence. But yeah, I always just shudder when I see somebody setting up for a vertebreaker. I'm like, oh,
Maybe I should have
please
said
don't.
that one. Yeah.
Yeah, please don't die. It's, oh man. Um, so you've been doing this long enough that I'm sure this applies. And so, what hurts right now?
Oh man, what hurts? What doesn't hurt? My back. My back has hurt for the last like 2 weeks. I've had, my ankle's hurt, and I can't tell you if my ankle's hurt from running. I can't tell you if it's hurting from jujitsu. My back is probably a combination of all those things, lifting, jujitsu, and wrestling. So, but I always tell, we have this little saying, if I'm always sore, I'm never hurt.
That's true. And there is a big difference between pain and discomfort.
Oh, 100%.
And yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. About 7 years ago, um, out of the blue, I got diagnosed with diverticulitis, which is what Kenny Omega just
Yeah.
recovered from. And I had the same kind of surgery that he did, and I was in the hospital for 3 days afterward. And And I knew at that point that there was a difference between pain and discomfort, but I learned it, kind of firsthand during that whole process. The first 24 hours, I was in pain, and then it
Yeah.
quickly transitioned to discomfort. And yeah, I mean, there definitely is a difference. And I'm glad to hear that you kind of concur with that.
I live in a constant state of being
Yeah,
sore, and I train with lots of guys that are, again, in jiu-jitsu, there's going to be lots of
yeah.
discomfort, um, and if you're doing things right, not as much pain, but you're always going to be in some sort of
Oh, for
discomfort.
sure, for sure. So, what is the most significant injury that you've suffered either wrestling or training?
Well, two. I'll
Okay.
give you two. I tore my groin slash lower
Yeah.
adductor muscles in a match right before it was before pre-COVID, so like 2018,
Hmm.
I think. And it was 5 minutes into a 30-minute match, and I finished that 30-minute match, and I was in a lot of pain. Um, I ended up, long story short, I was going to go to the doctor on Monday. That was a Saturday night. I woke up on Sunday in the middle of the night and passed out from the
Yeah.
pain. Scalped myself on my bed. My wife had to take me to the ER. It was 2019, so yeah, she took me to the ER to make sure didn't have any. I had to get stitches and all that. The other one, I tore my pec when I was
Hmm.
bench pressing, and this was 2 years ago now. So I tore my left pec when I was bench pressing. Not an insane amount of weight. I wouldn't call it for the guys that I train with, but it was over 315, and we had done plenty of warm up stuff, and we had gone through our working sets, and it was just a max set, and bar came down, and just felt a bunch of pops across my chest into my armpit, and I ended up having to go to the emergency room after, of course, I had breakfast with my crew and sat there with my torn pec at breakfast. But yeah, so those are my two biggest injuries, probably.
Gotcha. So, do you have an all-time favorite match as a fan? A match that you can have watched it a million times and it just never gets old, and there's always some new little nugget you can pull from it?
So I was thinking about this the other day. I think my favorite match of all time, and it's probably just personal for me, right? But Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock, WrestleMania 17. That WrestleMania is probably, arguably, one of the best WrestleManias, top three at least, of all time. And that I used to rent that VHS from our local video store. I feel like every week I would go and rent that VHS just to watch that match. It's one of my favorite matches to watch. Um, and two of the most talented, arguably top guys in the business ever, um, went out and had a fantastic match and listened to the crowd, and the crowd was just eating out of the palm of their hand the whole
Yep.
time.
So, what is your take on the role that social media is playing as a promotional tool in wrestling?
I think it's great as a promotional tool. I think it just, again, brings more eyes to us and gives us better opportunities to get in front of promoters and fans and ways to connect with people. Uh, but I think you got to do it responsibly. Obviously with social media comes the ability to say and whatever you would like to say, or show whatever you'd like to show. And I think as professional wrestlers, I think there should be a focus on the term
Yep.
professional. So I definitely try to ensure that I am treating it as such. It is a professional tool for me to promote myself and promote all the people and all the promotions that are associated with me.
Absolutely. Speed round. Brian Cage.
Huge,
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
He and I were on a show together. a couple of years ago. Billy Gunn was at the show, and I stood next to Brian Cage, and I was a little bit taller than him, but he's as wide as he
Yeah.
is tall. And then he went out and did all these lucha things, which was amazing to me to watch this guy do all these flips and all that.
Yeah,
So,
a guy
huge.
that size shouldn't be able to do some of the things he is able to do in the ring. I mean, just
Yeah.
you know, he is very physically gifted. I mean, but he works hard too. That's obvious.
Yes.
So, knowing everything you know at this point in your life, if you could give any advice to your younger self, what would it be?
It would be to be your biggest fan, your biggest supporter, and don't let anyone deter you from the things you want to do. I sometimes you can, as a younger professional wrestler, you can get lost uh, listening to everybody else and hearing the things that they think you should do or think, who you should be. But at the end of the day, you have to only go to sleep with yourself and your thoughts. So, and if you don't believe in yourself and that you are going to be a top guy, then you may not be that top guy. It might take you longer to get to that point. So, that's I would tell that to anybody, but definitely myself. I wanted to make sure younger me probably listened to. There's just a lot of chatter about who I should be and how I should act, and follow your gut.
Yep. There's a lot of chatter both externally and internally. Sometimes you can be your own worst enemy in terms of the self-doubts creep in and everything else. But I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying. Just be your own advocate.
100%.
So this question, I'm glad I actually get the opportunity to ask this one, because a lot of my guests are nearer to the business. So tell me, or tell us, about the impact the pandemic had on your wrestling career, because I know everything shut down for a bit.
I didn't wrestle I think I only wrestled 4 times in 2020, and maybe, I don't know, a handful more in 2021. Honestly, it was kind of a reset for me, which was nice. Coming back out of COVID really gave me my love for pro wrestling back. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, where I was going with my wrestling career at that time. And then, I had my son was born in the midst of the pandemic. And that gave me a little more life direction and focus in how I wanted to continue my professional wrestling journey. So I think it really just set me on the path of just kind of course correcting for me.
Right. So do you have any pre-show traditions, any things that you try to do consistently before you walk through the curtain?
Yeah, it's funny that I wish more people would ask me about this, because it's I go through this whole thing. So I never used to be a big believer in positive reinforcement. There's like this thing about self reinforcement. You speak to yourself, right? And so when I'm sitting in Gorilla before I go out, or I'll find like a dark corner away from everybody, and I just say, Anthony Toatele is a good wrestler. Anthony Toatele can do this in his sleep. This is nothing to him. I train with, and this part is true, I train with killers all week long, day in and day out. I'm getting smashed by, and I just name the guys that I train with and that I'm friends with, and guys that beat me up day in and day out. And when you start thinking about it in those terms, for me, the nerves just go away, because I can be in front of 1,000 people, but it's not going to be nearly as bad as getting beat up by an Indiana Hall of Fame wrestler, ex Bellator fighter, by the name of, his nickname is El Terrible. And I train with that guy at least once a week, and he's beating me up. So when you're putting things in, I just like to put things into perspective. And again, I'm just, I always look at my phone before I go out. I text my wife and I say, hey, I'm on deck. I love you and I love the kids. And then I look for her response back to me, and I find a picture of them, a family picture of us. And so all these things I just do within like this little 5-minute window that I have before I go out.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like you said, having the wide and varied set of training partners, iron sharpens iron, and training with with a murderer's row it's a double-edged sword. It's a good thing, but at the same time, like you said, you're going to get beat up,
Yeah.
and but
Yeah.
ultimately it makes you better.
Yeah, we always tell each other, or at least I tell myself this, that diamonds are created from pressure.
Yep.
The more pressure that I have from my own internal group that I train with, and the guys that I surround myself with, that group, then the better I'll come out on the other side.
So something that we've done in all of these that's just been kind of fun is we've let the current guest pose a question for the next guest. So my previous guest was a wrestler out of Pittsburgh by the name of Sean Phoenix. And the question that he posed is, in terms of wrestling, are you currently meeting your goals? And if you are not, what is holding you back?
That's a great question. So Sean, thank you. If you would have asked me this question 7-8 years ago, I would have said absolutely not. I'm not signed to WWE. I'm not making my living wrestling. But right now, my goals are kind of fluid in wrestling. So I'm not meeting all of my goals. But one of my big goals right now for wrestling is I never want wrestling to be more important than my family. And I think there's plenty of instances where guys have lost their way with that, and they're always looking at the business, and the business takes precedence over a lot of things. And for me, I love wrestling. I love the business of professional wrestling, but I'll never sacrifice my family or my time with my family for that. So that is the big goal that right now I'm achieving that. So
Absolutely. And, you've got your priorities correct. I mean, and that's a good thing to see, because too many people unfortunately get their priorities out of whack, and it ends
yeah.
up biting them in one way or another.
Yep.
So we're getting toward the end of things now. So do you have any upcoming shows or anything at all that you'd like to give some hype to?
Yeah. So I am Ohio Valley Wrestling, OVW, steeped in history. I am regularly appearing there for right now, knock on wood. I am there tomorrow night against a great wrestler by the name of Donovan Cecil, another young wrestler but very talented, Kentucky's strongest man, actually 3 years in a row, I believe. That's a
Wow.
shoot. But also, I work for another promotion that we're heading there this weekend called Super Shogun Wrestling. If you are interested in them, they do Japanese style pro wrestling. That's their
Oh,
thing.
that's
Their
cool.
theme is Japanese style pro wrestling in Michigan, here in the United States. And I feel so special about being a part of that group. We've really kind of built it up in the last year and a half. And they've got a great social presence, and we're trying to get more and more eyes on that product, because I can tell you that they have one of the best products right now. So they have a YouTube and they put their shows out for free. I believe that their last show that I did commentary for it premieres tonight, actually.
I will have to definitely check that out. That sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
So, one last speed round name. Um, and he's kind of gone by a few names. They're all kind of derivatives of his actual name, Donovan Dijakovic.
Oh yeah, Donovan
Dijak.
Dijak.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, underrated as well. Super
yeah,
underrated.
yeah, yeah. I actually really like what he's doing right now in MLW, and I'm hoping that he's going to get the opportunity to get back on one of the even bigger stages soon. You know,
Me
because
too.
he is immensely talented
Yeah.
and talented in the ring, and also just creatively. The guy has a great mind. You know. Uh, in terms of his mind and the way he looks at wrestling, he kind of reminds me of Karrion Kross. You know,
Oh,
they both are just creatively very just full of ideas. You know.
Karrion Cross is another, both those guys very talented, and definitely should be on the biggest platform.
Absolutely. So as far as what we've got coming up here at the Throwdown, tomorrow, Thursday the 6th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, I've got a guy from South Florida, the Shogun Bruce Cross. He is currently being featured in All Caribbean Wrestling, which Mark Henry just got appointed as their CEO. And they are presently they're running shows in the Caribbean, but they're also starting to run some shows in Florida, and they're trying to make some inroads into the mainland U.S. market. So I'm going to be interested to talk with him tomorrow night. And then next Wednesday, the 12th at 7 p.m., I've got another wrestler by the name of Danny Orion. And I'm looking forward to talking to him and seeing what he's got going on. But Anthony, I want to thank you for your time. This has been a lot of fun. And you know, just getting to pick your brain, hear your story, and you know, it's been an honor, man.
No, I appreciate you having me on and give me an opportunity to tell my story, and you know, just wish the best for you, with you and your guests, and hopefully you have 500 episodes of the Throwdown.
Well, that's the goal. You know, I'm having a blast with these, and you know, for those of you that have been watching this live, thank you. For those of you that'll be seeing this on replays on the web or on clips or whatever, you know, thank you for that. If you like what we've got going here, do the old like, comment, share, subscribe, spread the word. This thing's really taking on a life of its own, and like I said, I couldn't be happier. And so, like I said, I'll be back tomorrow night at 7 p.m. with the Shogun Bruce Cross out of All Caribbean Wrestling. And in the meantime, love each other, be good to each other, and